Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's Ken Angst here, the team leader of the Angst Real Estate team with Haute Properties. We're coming to you at the end of the quarter for 2022. So what I thought I would do today is bring in one of our favorite lenders, Elena Bolin with Wholesale Mortgage. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. So this is going to be a longer podcast. We'll split it up. We're just going to cover a lot of topics that her and I are both seeing, kind of talked about on the side, that a lot of people out there don't really know what they're talking about, and we want to make sure that our spheres and our clients are educated about what these things are going on. So how are things going?
Really good. Busy market. Tough out there for buyers.
Tough for buyers.
It's still pretty low.
Yep.
So that's even in a rising interest rate market, we're still seeing a ton of competition out there.
Yeah, a lot of competition. We'll talk about that in a second. We are going to cover what the market's doing in the Reno Sparks area, but we're going to switch it up today and draw people in on a topic that comes up a lot because of this hot market. So the first thing we want to talk about is, especially Elena, who knows this topic very well, is what does it mean when a buyer comes in and puts on the contract, I'm going to waive the appraisal, because there is, and I don't know if people are not being educated appropriately, but once they get in the contract, waiving the appraisal, it means several different things, and we need to make sure that you're educated before you go that route. So First of all, what is waiving the appraisal? I understand there's two different terms here. Waive the appraisal meaning what? What does that mean?
When we're talking in lender terms, if you pre-underwrite the file and you run it through what's called the automated underwriting system, the buyer profile combined with the property address, when run together, can tell you if you're granted an appraisal waiver or not. And that means as far as your loan goes, an appraisal is not required.
Okay, but does anybody know that until they have an accepted offer?
That's touch and go, because a lot of buyers unfortunately come to us in contract already or tell us, hey, I got an offer accepted this weekend. If they come to us in advance and say, hey, I'd like to put an offer in on this property, can you run it through the automated underwriting system for me? We can do that. It's about a 15-minute task.
I had no idea that you could even do that.
Yeah, if you have a complete file. Now that's the key, is the borrowers have to come in with a complete file, and then the only missing piece there is the appraisal information, right? So the property address. So once we have that and it's super thorough, we can certainly enter it. And before you even put an offer in, you can know if you have an appraisal waiver or not.
Great.
Based on the sales price that you were saying you're going to put an offer in with. Okay,
so that's news to me. But a lot of people have a pre-approval letter, which isn't necessarily what you're talking about, correct? I mean, it's another step to go beyond that and full approval. You got that full approval contingent upon appraisal. Is that what?
Right.
So
most times you do need an appraisal.
Okay.
So that means that even if your purchase contract says you're waiving the appraisal contingency as your lender, you still have to get an appraisal.
Right. So there's confusion. So when people say they waive the appraisal, most people think that they don't need to get an appraisal if you're getting if you're getting a mortgage. But now if you're doing cash, of course that's not applicable, but you can't waive it on behalf of your lender. And what it means, I think when most people put that on there, or have agents have their clients put it on there, it means, I'm just going to use an example. If we're putting an offer in at 5, let's just say the list price is at 500, and we're putting an offer in at 6, and we're going to waive the appraisal, meaning that if it doesn't come in at 6, we're willing to do what? What does it mean if we're saying we're going to waive the appraisal and make up the difference? What does that mean?
Come in with money, come in with extra cash in addition to your required down payment.
So someone puts an offer in at 6, and I've seen it happen, it appraises at 5, and you're putting 20% down. What does that mean? How much money do you have to have?
That means that you're going to need to come up with an extra $100,000 in excess of your 20% down payment.
Plus closing costs.
Plus closing costs, which is obviously significant, and most buyers don't quite grasp that.
Yes.
They think that it's not a requirement, and if the appraisal is still a requirement for your loan, lenders cannot lend above the appraised value ratio. So that means if you're putting 20% down, you're trying to avoid that mortgage insurance, it's got to appraise what you are offering for, unless you really do have the extra funds to put down in excess of the appraised value.
Okay, so we've already spent 5 minutes on that. We got a lot to cover.
Mm-hmm.
Be very careful and make sure you understand that, because I see a lot of offers on our listings of agents putting buyers in a bad situation, and I don't know for sure, but I get the feeling that they don't know what it means when you're waiving the appraisal. So be careful. Make sure that you're talking to a lender ahead of time, and make sure that you can afford it.
Right. I want to say one more thing about that. I every day get contracts and see the contingency waived, and then when we go to order the required appraisal, the buyers say, I waived it, I don't need it. So really do talk about what that means with your agent and your lender.
Yep. Make sure you know what that means, because it can put you in a bad spot, and if you have earnest money at risk, you could lose it.
Right.
So fortunately, there's a lot of ways to get out of a contract, but if you're not careful, you could eat that earnest money if you have a seller that's astute. So all right, so now we're going to move into, that was the educational topic for the first quarter. Now we're going to talk about the February 2022 market statistics for the Reno Sparks area. I want to be very clear on what this report is. It's resale homes. It's not new homes, and we're in the Reno Sparks area. So just keep that in mind when we're looking at the report. So we're going to go through it together, kind of change it up, and I'm going to let Elena talk about what the median home sale price for February was.
February median sales price is $559,000 for Reno and Sparks.
Incredible. How much up year over year?
24.2% increase since last year.
So 25% increase. It's incredible. That's a huge jump. So it's becoming pretty unaffordable, and we talked about this last year, and it continues to go up. And we'll talk about rates in a second. But the interesting part about that, it's down 2% from the previous month. So that could just be weather or not as many houses being sold. So it could be things, but almost $560,000 for a median home sale price. Right. Incredible.
Yes.
So I'm going to talk about closed sales. So for the month of February, we closed about 372 closed deals, and that's down 4% from last year and down about 8% from January. So not a lot of houses being closed, particularly if you think about, the greater Reno Sparks area is a large area. So under 400 homes closed. Talk about days to contract now.
5 days, which is pretty impressive.
Yep.
But that just tells you, if you find a home that you like, the urgency needs to be there for a statistical reason, not just because you're being given that type of advice.
Right. And another thing about that, which is interesting, is basically why is it 5? It probably is less.
Right.
But a lot of sales or realtors have their sellers putting it on the market on Thursday and saying we're reviewing offers on Monday.
Right.
So you can imagine, I'm guessing that number could be 2 or 3 days.
I would definitely say so.
If you just let it go and accept an offer as it comes in. So pretty low number, and that just kind of goes to show you, be ready and ready to rock if you're a buyer.
Right.
So of course, in this market, we're talking list price received. It's about 100.3 on the median price. I'm seeing on some of our listings 5-10% over asking. So it's very, for the median home price, it's 103, but on the higher end, I've been in several cases where we've lost out recently 50, 75 over asking.
Right.
It's crazy.
I think that varies a ton per neighborhood.
It does, absolutely. And if you're in the lower end, it seems to be a little bit more. So keep that in mind that, most cases within reason, obviously talk to your realtor or your professionals, you're going to have to go over list price, but it has to make sense for you. So
right.
Talk about sold price per square foot.
$315 per square foot. That is up 21.9% since last year.
So crazy. And then I kind of want to opine about that a little bit is keep in mind $315 per square foot is the median price, and it is neighborhood to neighborhood, house to house. So
Right.
I don't particularly care for that number, but that's one of the stats that they give out. But it's still incredible to think houses in the Reno Sparks area $315 a square foot.
Really important to know too that doesn't mean that's what your house is going to appraise for. That number times your square footage is definitely important to talk to a realtor about that information.
Yep. So keep that in mind. So now we're getting down to the meat of the report. We're talking 460 new listings. So basically we're closing 372 and we're bringing on 460 homes. So basically we're almost selling out of whatever we have that's on the market. That's up about 13%. And this is the big thing that I like to talk about is our team has gotten a lot of come list me calls in the last week. I've been saying this for several months, but I'm still a firm believer, and I tell my buyers, you got to be patient, that once we hit April, we'll see a significant uptick. And we already have 13% over January. So,
right. It's good news. If you're a buyer,
good news.
You have some more homes to choose from shortly.
Yeah, and then there'll be less competition because there'll be more homes. So hopefully that will allow some of our buyers that we're working with get a house.
Yes.
So let's talk about active inventory.
230 new active homes, down 25%.
So you can see that any one time, the active inventory in the Reno Sparks area, incredible number. And I think if you look at this by week or day by day, it's under 200. Yeah. So there's only 200 active inventory at 230 at any given time, down 25%.
Right.
So that's a huge decrease.
Yes. And if you think about it too, if you are in a specific price range, with if you're 475 to 500, 500 to 525,
it's a lot lower.
Of that number, where do your homes fall out of the 230? So it's important to know that's a real statistic.
So you can actually pull that information, and when we have more time, I like to pull that because it'll show you a distribution based on price and then how many active in each one. Right. So that's actually a very good discussion. Unfortunately, we have so much information to talk about today, and we'll get to that next time. So, and then month's supply of inventory is just basically that you have your active inventory, you get new homes coming on the market, and then you have closed, and you divide that out. And if we didn't get any new homes that come in on the market, we would run out of inventory in less than a half month.
Wild.
So it's a hot market. It's a buyer's nightmare and a seller's dream.
Right.
So keep that in mind. But if you're a buyer, keep in mind, we kind of talked about this, and it's important to reiterate, we talked about off the record. How many offers do you see an average person putting in before they're successful?
6 to 8.
6 to 8, so a little better than our team. Our team is about 7 to 10. So a lot of our clients have put in 2 and they want to give up. I'm like, don't give up yet.
Right.
So you got to keep after it.
Yes.
And eventually between the good team, you will prevail.
Right. Staying the course is key.
Yep.
To
and
success.
Not getting disappointed, because we have a lot of disappointed buyers.
Yeah.
But we don't give up easily, and you shouldn't either if you really want to help.
That's right.
All right, so we're gonna crash into other topics here. Let's talk about interest rates. They're kind of crazy right now.
Yeah.
When I'm seeing not to exceed on some of my offers, 4.875. I haven't had to put a 4 on there in a while.
It's there now.
So what are rates doing, and what is your forecast for the rest of this year?
They are high 3s for government loans. So government loans are USDA, FHA, VA. Conventional loans, which we're seeing more of right now, we're seeing high 4s. And I'm not even going to put a point anything on it because it's so frequently changing right now. That brings into the subject of locking in your interest rate. It is imperative as soon as you are in contract to lock your rate, and to even consider other programs like Lock and Shop. You can lock in your interest rate for 90 days and go shopping. It's not always the best, but it's something to consider and look into.
So when you lock and shop, is that what you just said? You pay a premium for that?
There are some that cost and some that do not. Some are free, but usually when they don't cost anything, they come with a bit of a higher interest rate because these investors know that rates are going up, and it's just called hedging the rate, right? So it's all about a little market play there, but it definitely can be to a buyer's advantage to to just kind of play both sides. I mean, if you can do it, do it. That's why it's so important to make sure you go into a lot of detail with your lender about options.
Yeah. So this is why we have Elena in. This is excellent. Hedging your interest rate, which we haven't had to do in like 10 years.
Yeah.
But it's for real. The Fed is raising the rate how many times coming up?
2 more.
6.
Well,
Six,
two in the immediate.
Yeah,
yes.
2 million, but they're projecting 6 quarter%, and they might do it quicker. But rates are not going to go down. So if you're this lock and shot, get in and talk to Elena about that, because that sounds like a pretty interesting thing.
Yes.
So rates are going up, and it what I'm seeing, and then let me know what you're thinking, is it's really impacting the people on the lower end, under 500 and under. It's really that it's creeping up, making it really unaffordable.
Right.
People on the upper end that have money, what they're doing is they're putting 50% down, 60%, and then taking a mortgage out on the remaining balance.
Right.
And I'm not trying to minimize anybody's money out there, but I don't think it impacts someone in that situation as much as the first-time home buyer in the moment.
Right, because naturally it's a smaller loan for those buyers that have that advantage of a large down payment. But one positive to it I want to point out is wages are increasing, so the affordability factor is still really great as compared to 2005 when the affordability factor was not there. Wages were much lower when rates were higher at that point in time. So it really is actually more affordable now than it was then, which is a wild piece of information, but important to know.
Yep.
Just consider that. Can you afford the payment? Don't hang yourself too much on what is the rate today, what is the rate today. Think about, can I afford this payment for my family?
We're going to talk about that in a second. So next thing we're going to stress, it's in the quarter. We see a lot of mistakes between the two of us by people who don't have the appropriate real estate team.
Right.
And now, I want to be clear on what the appropriate real estate team is. Obviously, you need a local lender. And keep in mind, and we're giving you some tips here, not anyone is going to make a difference, but if by the time you get down to the bottom and you do all the things we're talking about, it is the difference between winning and losing and selling a home.
Yeah,
getting top
that's
dollars.
the main thing.
So these are little tips and tricks. One by itself won't make a difference, but by the time you add them all up, it will. So make sure you're looking with a local lender. I'm just telling you that some of the deals we work on, or even if I'm the listing agent, it's nice to see a familiar face that I've worked with before. If I have some mortgage company I've never heard of, and I got a call, it's 3 hours ahead, you could lose a deal because if for example, the listing agent is looking at your offer on the weekend, can't get a hold of the lender, a lot of times we call lenders and make sure that they're qualified. So if you're not working with someone local that picks up the phone, as a buyer, you could lose out.
Yes, I get 8 to 10 calls every weekend, and they from listing agents, just making sure that
This person,
that the buyer's for real and all the information is verified.
sellers do not want to show their house 30 times and then find out a week later that this person wasn't pre-approved. So keep that in mind. It's a little tip out there for buyers. We just talked about this. Oh no, so we're talking about local lenders, sorry. And then we're talking, obviously you want to work with a realtor that's competent, hopefully the Angst real estate team. But I see a lot of people, oh, my brother, my sister, my relative is my agent. And if they don't have experience, I'm not saying that people don't get in the business and do a good job. But in this market, if you're a buyer, you need to be having an agent that's seasoned, that puts a contract together well, that makes calls and does some negotiations to get you in the contract. Otherwise, you can just be wasting your time.
Right, and works full time.
Full time, yes. So a full-time agent is
Yes.
important. I don't know. We'll have to get the. Do you know how many agents are in the? It's 3,000 to 4,000.
It's in excess of 3.
Okay, so there's a lot of agents out there that are doing it part-time.
Right.
Make sure that you're working with a professional that does it full-time and is
Right.
familiar. And a lot of the relationships that we have with each other as peers sometimes can make the difference. You call, they know that I'm a closer, or Elena. Again, it's one of the things that if you do all these things together, it makes a big difference.
It does.
We see a lot of mistakes being made on the accounting side. Home values are up. People are selling their house within 1 year. We're not CPAs. We're not enrolled agents. But if you're selling your house, and we'll talk about this in a second, or making any kind of decisions, you need to know what the tax ramifications are. So if you don't have an accountant, and you're talking to them before you do anything in the real estate side, it could be potentially tens of thousands of dollars in mistakes.
Easily.
We see it all the time.
Yeah.
Also, talk to an attorney, especially if you have rental properties. Make sure that everything's in order. So, again, we talked about this in the last quarter, but we're reiterating it. Have your team in order.
Right.
And if you need somebody on that list, that's the benefit of working with agents that work together. We have a lot of people that we can refer you to that are top notch that will do a good job for you. Okay, so we're gonna move into, at 20 minutes here, we're gonna move into buyer tips.
Okay.
First buyer tip, and she's doing a great job of just kind of cutting in when you see it. We already talked about this, reiterate one last time. Use a local lender. People don't believe me, but it makes the difference.
Having the ability to walk into an office and talk to your lender face to face too really does mean something versus the call center lenders. If they decline your loan at the 11th hour, there's no face to face consequence for them in seeing what the ramifications are to what they've done to you and your family and your living situation. They can decline your loan and hang up on you.
And I get this objection a lot is, oh, my online lender is cheaper, I get a better deal. I'm telling you that is not the case for the lenders we use locally. Very competitive, low rates, and there's something to be said. There's a price to be paid for good customer service, and that's something we believe in as a team. But if and it's good to have your agent working as a team. That's important to have a successful escrow.
Just like you said, with the sometimes PM negotiations, you can be in contract already and an issue may come up and you need to have the problem solved by morning. And if your agent and your lender cannot work as a team because it's after 5 p.m., that's going to only disserve you as a buyer and as a seller.
So there are problems with, I can tell you, with the time change or the time difference between the East Coast. So, but we're not going to beat that horse to death. Use a local lender. Lock rates when you're in contract. Rates are not going to go down. They're being aggressive. They're trying to stop inflation, and the Fed is going to rate 0.25%, 0.5%. So get that locked in as soon as possible.
And if you're feeling skeptical about the predictions, you don't like basing your interest rate lock off of predictions. Most lenders have it's called a float down policy, where if you've locked in your rate at 4.75% and you are concerned that rates are going to go down, if they drop 0.25% or more, you can drop your rate as well. It can't be every little incremental change of 0.05. It's usually, for most lenders, got to be 0.25% or better to take advantage of that float down policy.
Okay. If you're a buyer, you gotta have patience. Don't overpay for a home. I know that. I'm working with one right now where the listing agent, not gonna say any names, has it about 100,000 over asking. So you gotta be patient. Don't get in a situation, and my client doesn't have that money to make up the difference. But it's clearly not gonna appraise. So what their sellers are doing is fishing for someone. So don't get in that spot. And then the biggest thing, Lane and I have both been through this in 2004 and 5. Make sure you can afford your mortgage payment for long term, because we're likely going to have slow down the economy. So if you can't afford it after a month, I'd be wary about buying a house right now. So.
Right. That's when I feel like a recent thing that happened as a lesson from the pandemic is a little scare to most families. If you don't work for 3 months, do you have enough savings there, and are you comfortable with that payment? Most people can get back into the employment game and get yourself back into some wages and some funds there, but definitely think about that contingency plan.
So that's why we have her on. That is an excellent point. If you didn't get scared, I mean, we're all scared. Once you lose your job, the real estate market, my household, my wife was furloughed, the market slowed down, we were fine, but it kind of said, if this happens for an extended period of time, you could lose it. So
a little gut punch there.
Yeah, so
in a good way.
In a good way. Luckily, it wasn't long term. So
right.
That's it for buyers. If you have any more questions about loans or want to talk to us, we're obviously available for consultations. Want to talk about sellers? We're at 24 minutes. Want to talk about seller tips. So first thing is, I got a call over the weekend from a client. I want to list my house on Saturday, and I want to put an offer on my dream house. How do you think that went?
Probably didn't happen.
Yeah, so the biggest thing is think about what your goals are and then talk to a real estate professional. Because if you come to me one day and say, hey, I want to list my house, within one day, it's just not going to happen. Because to get top dollar from your home, you got to plan. There's definitely a strategy where we can get in there, get things in order, have it ready to go if you're thinking about or you want to wait for that dream home. But coming in the 11th hour and wanting to list your home, and I'm here to tell you, if you're a contingent sale in this market, you have very, very small to no chance to get a deal.
That's why it's so important to plan and talk to.
Now, it's a different story if you have your house ready and it can be listed. But if you're going as a contingency and saying I'm going to have my house listed in 2 or 3 weeks, no one's going to accept that offer. So don't even, bad planning, but get in and talk to us and get it lined out if you want to do something like that, or talk about it on how that looks. The biggest thing I see from sellers is somebody, and we represent buyers that bought a house. This poor seller bought it 9 months ago. They had $150,000 gain. We're not accountants, but what do you think happened?
Capital gains.
Yeah, so you need to know what it means to be owner occupied and the tax ramifications. We're not going to talk about what they are because they can change, but keep in mind that if there's a big capital gain, some of the title companies will actually 1099 you and withhold money. So don't think that make sure you know the tax ramifications of selling your house under 2 years.
Right.
Because you do not get to claim that as a primary residence. So talk to your accountant, CPA.
Yes.
Be careful, because I'm telling you, I see people, I see clients, it's tens of thousands of dollars in mistakes.
Right, and I've seen agents, not purposely, but giving bad advice via email saying, if you list your home and go sell it now, you will get to use the proceeds as a write-off. I've seen some wild advice out there, so do make sure that you talk to an accountant.
So we have the best one, so give us a call. Of course, we're going to run out of battery here. You know how it works. So the biggest thing too is if you're listing your home, resist the urge to overprice it.
Right.
The problem is if you with 230 homes, most sell in 5 days. If your house goes past a week, 2 weeks being on the market, it has a stigma attached and it's hard to sell, and the cascading effect down is big. Right. So a lot of our clients listen to us. What we recommend is look at comps closely. Ultimately, it's up to you. We put it at or a little bit below market, and people are being rewarded nicely for that.
Lots of buyers are drawn in that way.
Yep.
Qualified buyers, because most that that are overpriced, it's gonna scare a buyer off.
Yep.
And sometimes it'll draw the wrong buyer in who maybe doesn't have the money to pay for an elevated price.
Right.
So it's
and
something
the bottom line is that not everyone's cash. So a lot of people need to get a mortgage, and lenders are typically not going to allow you to overpay unless you have a lot of cash. Yep. So make sure that you hire a good agent. And I'm not just talking about the Angst real estate team, but in general, make sure that you're going to have an agent that's going to promote your listing in California. If you're not promoting your properties in California, Sacramento, there's a lot of people moving here. You got to have the reach down there. We work with a lot of agents, and we do social media down there that is promoting your house down there, because invariably it's probably going to be a California buyer.
Right.
So make sure that you have that reach. Make sure you're not skimping on what it takes to get top dollar. We see a lot of people using iPhone pictures and doing all this other stuff. That's just lazy, and it's not going to help you. Like, this is your best probably opportunity to get top dollar for your home. Have your agent and spend the time to get it in shape so that you do recover that top. And what I'm talking about that, we talk about this a lot, and we can meet and talk. Paint is a really good way to get top dollar. It makes it look crisp. Clean the windows. Professionally cleaned, it makes a huge difference. Declutter, and then landscape. We're getting in the season, 3 months ago, I would say landscape's not important because we can't turn on water, but if you look outside, it's gonna be 80 degrees this week. You're gonna have to do that. So the last tip, let her kind of talk about this. Sellers beware. and we've had this happen to us a lot on the listing side, is we have a lot of agents and buyers that will say or do anything to get into contract. So they'll say, oh, we'll pay you $100,000 over asking, waive the appraisal, which the buyer probably doesn't even understand what that means. And then what they do is, what we're seeing on ours is, it's only happened to us once, by the way, is they try and renegotiate on the other side, blame it on the inspection. They don't want to pay the $100,000. They're shocked that it didn't appraise. So there's a lot of tricks that agents and buyers are doing to get in contract that you got to be aware of. Anything on that? Just be careful.
Yes. I'm seeing some buyers ask us if they can bring the appraisal contingency back into play once they've already waived it. Once the contingency period has long passed, because like you said, maybe something came up on the home inspection, which is completely different. And that's why it's so important to make sure that you understand what you're signing when you enter into contract. Yeah, there's a lot of things in the contract. Make sure you understand them. Make sure that you have an agent explaining it and exactly what happens, because in this market, it probably won't appraise. So a few tips out there. If you're for sale by owner, we're willing to help you as well. And if you're a seller thinking about it, things you need to think about to avoid that situation is make sure that your agent or yourself is calling the lender and making sure that they can qualify for what they're promising to put it on paper. Right. So we call all buyers, get permission. We call their lender. And make sure that they can afford it. That's the number one thing. Second thing is make sure that you're asking for a substantial amount of earnest money. Right. So if someone bails, doesn't follow the contract, it hurts. And I'm not talking $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 in this market. Usually what I like to see is 1 to 3% of the sale price. So if you're in that 500,000, I like to see $10,000 to make sure, because I want it to sting. $10,000 is still not a lot of money, believe it or not, but if they get out of line, I want to prevent things from going, make sure they have skin in the game. Right. And then the biggest thing is you don't want to accept an offer that has like a 3 or 4 week inspection contingency. Make sure you're getting that out of the way. Anybody should easily be able to get that out of the way in this market in 10 to 15 days. Because you want to limit their ability to get out of the contract and find things that are wrong. The other thing is make sure that you fill out your seller's real property disclosure form up front and have them sign that along with the contract. Anything else? As far as sellers go, I think you touched on the most important things, but make sure that you as an agent or a for sale by owner are just in constant communication with the lender who is helping the buyer. It should at least be weekly. If it isn't weekly, you should feel like something is wrong and follow up on that intuition. And it's really important that that open communication is there.
That's a beautiful point. Our team, we email once a week, title, other agent, lender, and then we give a full report every Thursday. That's when you get a call from me saying, here's what's going down. Stay in contact, keep an eye on it, make sure that everyone's following the dates. Yes. So, in the first quarter.
Thank you.
Can't believe it.
Second
quarter, April 1st. Watch out. It's my favorite day of the year. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. Like our videos. Hopefully this is providing some kind of quality information that you can use if you're a buyer, seller, or whatever. If you ever want to just talk about real estate or find out, we're always available for lunch. No strings attached. We'd love to talk about real estate. So. Yes. Until next time, you guys take care out there. Enjoy this nice weather. And Easter's on its way. So until next time, you guys take care and we'll talk to you soon.
All right.